so much. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon. Yeah, some days my days just run along. I don't know if you guys know how that feels, but yeah, super excited to be here and to engage with the community. I was just telling Dan Summer when she was asking me about my daughter. Me and my wife had this great plan about putting money away and for retirement and building a nice home and beautiful thing. And then we had this wonderful love child called Isabella, who's 10 months old, and so I had to redirect some of the funds towards her now. So, the goal now is that she will enjoy that whatever summer plan I had for retirement. But just super excited to be here today. I'm also super excited to be a part of the community. Every time I get this question, I said, let me just start by telling folks, before I took this job, I looked at a year and a half of YouTube videos of the board meeting and trying to learn everything I can about that room. And folks said to me, well, did you enjoy it? My response, absolutely. That is why I'm here today. But I will tell you something, I've been very fortunate in my career, and I tell folks whether that was intentionally or unintentional. And one thing I learned about our educational system is that things happen whether it's by design or not. And I always said from getting the opportunity, I felt blessed to be able to work for some great superintendents, learning good lessons and bad lessons. I said the day I get this opportunity, at least I'm prepared to know what it is and what to try to do and how to engage an entire community around the work. And I feel very fortunate to do that. This is something I do not take lightly, I tell folks. If you heard me speak before, I tell folks all the time, I may be the superintendent, but it takes a village to do the work. And if you haven't figured it out yet, no matter whether you have children in the school, not in the school, whatever part of the city in Baton Rouge, you are part of that village. And what I've learned from some great school leaders is those leaders that have been able to galvanize that village around the mission and understanding that all children in the city, or everyone who participates in the city, have an impact on education. Those cities have flourished in ways that are unbelievable. And my hope, hope is not a strategy, my goal is that being a superintendent in this school, hopeful that my tenure in this job, which I'm hopeful to be a very long time, is that I'm remembered for someone who's been able to help facilitate the entire community to help us support our education system together, not by myself. And so I'm going to guide you a little bit to some thoughts and ideas that I have that I think that's important to kind of crystallize a little bit about our work in East Baton Rouge together. And so we call this the cradle to career pipeline, and unlocking what we call our bright futures. And a couple of things I want to share with you is when I talk about cradle to career, I'm talking about how do you provide children in all parts of this city an opportunity to make their futures closer to them. See, just like many children in this city, I know many of you, I'm sure I'm sitting with a lot of overachievers here that did outstanding in school and straight A's and those things, right? Whether that was by design or not, we somehow figured out how to navigate our system or our education system in a way that helped us to become productive folks in society, right? Would you agree with that? How many people are sitting in a job right now that they always knew they were going to do? Okay. Sitting in a job that you always knew that you were going to do. So I see about 2 hands. Oh, you're reneging. Okay. Let me ask a different question. How many people are sitting in a job right now they never imagined they would be doing in their lives?
Yeah, retirement.
Right? Another question. How many people say what they learned in school apply to what they're doing in their current job in K-12? Now that's great. So, but I want you to just take a quick look as you look around the room. What did you notice? Anyone? You want to take a shot at that? What did you notice? Just popcorn it out.
Not many hands.
Huh?
Not many hands went up.
Not many hands went up. And what I would say to you, if I took you into any space in terms of education in any city, you would probably see the same exact thing. And what has become a reality in many school systems across the country now is there's clarity that workforce development and engaging folks and kids as early into aligning jobs in the city that they live in is a very important thing to happen now, not later. See, when I came here to Baton Rouge, the first thing I did was I had some conversations with folks. As many superintendents, you talk to community members, business partners, faith-based leaders, and those things. And I learned a couple of great things about our wonderful state of Louisiana. I don't know if you know this, but the state of Louisiana is one of 3 states where people who are born here stay here. Did you know that? Yes. Imagine that. We pretty much know our workforce already. See, in most transient cities across the nation, where I come from in Washington, D.C., you're lucky to get that as 35%. Everybody else is transient, right? And because everybody's transit, their strategy is to try to figure out how do they lure people to jobs and keep them there. See, in our state, we don't have that problem. We could pretty much tell you who's going to take our place. Why? Because they stay here, right? So the question that we have to figure out is how do we make sure they're prepared for those jobs for the future, right? So I had this idea. There's this guy named Adam Knapp. I don't know if you know him, but Adam, I said to him, Adam, just knowing from every chamber that I've been in all these cities, I said, is there a report in Baton Rouge that says what are the current jobs that are available here? And he came out with this report. It was in 2019, I can't remember what the date was, and it talked about the current jobs that were here now and the jobs that are going to open up in the next 10 years from now, right? And within those jobs, I said, what if we spoke to some of those CEOs, asking them if they fill those jobs? Look at some of the most largest organizations that actually hire a lot of our kids. Would you believe those jobs are all not filled? What if we figured out how to take a job approach in a school district, an entire system, and made it much more workforce connected, so kids who graduate from those jobs are much more ahead in actually getting a paying job and contributing back to that community. See, when you ask me a question as a dad, because I'm a girl dad, what do I care about before I pass away in life? And I want my daughters to be able to be self-sustaining, good citizens, but also have a job. So they can take care of themselves and take care of their families and those things. And so I want to show you something that we want to move our district to so we can kind of connect those pieces to the puzzle. So when we came in, there was a couple of things I noticed. I always say that Baton Rouge is what you call untapped potential. And the reason I say it's untapped potential because there's so much more things that we can take advantage of that I don't think we take advantage of. We're the state capital of Louisiana, which means we have particular politicians in our backyard, right? We're a city that's growing, which means there's a lot of financial opportunities that we have to connect. We're kind of the midway of Louisiana. You got to drive through Baton Rouge in some way or another, connect here if you want to do anything in our wonderful state. Am I not telling you the truth? Anybody wants to disagree with me on that? That means, in my mind, that there's a whole lot of beautiful things that we should be doing even better than what we're doing now. And there's also things that we've done that we can build off over time. And I want to show that to you, what that means as it pertains to East Baton Rouge. And the reason I think it's important to know what it means for East Baton Rouge is because East Baton Rouge Parish School System is the second largest school system in the entire state. We have almost 41,000 students, diverse in a lot of different ways, right? And so we graduate probably about 2,080 kids a year, which means that we have a lot of future employees. And if we can help them close their future work gap earlier, then we can change how not only we are as a school system, but more importantly, how we function as a city. Because the last I checked, everybody wants to live in a city that's economically developing over time. And that is the reality about this work. And so I'm going to share just a few things around what we call our keys to success. So for the last 5 months, as I've been learning about our school system, a couple of things that I noticed. Number one, we currently do not have across our system access to early care and education. What early care and education, you probably heard, if you haven't been reading the papers, I've been pushing this thing called universal pre-K. And universal pre-K means kids learn from ages 0 to 4. Many cities have moved towards that direction, and the reason they move towards that direction is because what you learn is kids don't fall behind at kindergarten, first grade, second grade. They actually fall behind the day they are born if they don't have families that have resources to help them learn how to read, write, and comprehend. And the question that I try to ask myself is not what's going on only for our school district, but what does this mean for our entire city? See, we average about almost 10,000 babies in our entire city. So imagine if you had all 10,000 of those kids getting educated in all types of schools. You'd have a very different intellectual workforce that you can work on with high quality skilled jobs and those things. See, because learning starts at an early age, it doesn't start at the end of the pipeline. The other part we talked a lot about, which I always say we're in a Haley's Comet moment, because rarely do you see a state superintendent, superintendents, business leaders, and communities are all aligned around this notion that every kid needs to read and write and do really well. We've aligned all our work the same way the state has, because the reality is, if we get kids to do well early, we solve a whole lot of problems later, right? And I think that is a coordination that we can be doing so much better than we're doing now. And we're actually making progress in that space. Our goal is we just need the entire village to be with us as we move this work. Another couple of things I want to highlight with you, which I think is a game changer for us in East Baton Rouge Parish School System, is that we want to take kids' futures and make it closer to them. Now, credit be told, Summer Dan at Leisure School was already thinking about some of these ideas before I got here. So I tell folks, I didn't come up with these great ideas on my own. I just wanted to try to figure out how to maximize. In all the cities that I have been in, when you look at what has been the most successful thing about those cities, is that they have been clear about closing what they call their economic gap. Notice I told you it's an economic gap. See, the better you become economically, which includes education, the better you overcome all these other sets of issues that are in our country. And I would challenge anybody around that notion. If you solve the problem of the economic gap, you would be surprised how much you see a community integrate better. You would see surprised how a community contributes back together. You'd be surprised on things that you wouldn't be really surprised about from an everyday aspect. And the goal that we have in East Baton Rouge is to close that gap. So you may say to me, Narcisse, what does that mean in English? Well, that means to me that we are going to move our school system to graduate from high school. You will need to do the following. It will no longer be just a high school degree. It will be a high school degree and an associate's degree, or an industry certification. And you would then say to me, well, what would that look like? I would tell you, it looks like those degrees that are specific to the jobs that are particular to Baton Rouge and the state of Louisiana. And let me show you a little bit more. Are you intrigued yet?
Yes.
All right, so let me take you down this road. I'm going to sort it. So what did I say? If we have an equity gap that leads to what? An economic gap. And our economic gap can be solved through what we call our workforce development. Now, I always tell folks, I never take ideas as brand new. I took this idea because as I've been going through education all these years, I've been trying to figure out like everybody else. Is it that they got to do better in English class to get an A? Should it be about them getting an AP class? Should it be about an IB course or this particular school? No. Every parent and family, what they care about is a better life for their child. And that better life is to get them to be focused into the areas of what they want to do, but also making sure that economically they can take care of themselves, right? And so that's kind of where our context is. So let me tell you, when I talk about Untitled, what has happened so far in that move. One, never before have we had so many stakeholders beginning to become aligned around a common mission around our school system, or just in the city. See, when we talk about universal pre-K, I'm yet to find somebody who said that's not a great idea. Have you? And if you have, let me know. I have no problem bringing a cake to their house with some wine to have a conversation. No other place have I ever seen where folks have said, you know, if you had a child graduating with an industry certification and associate's degree, and I didn't have to worry about paying my first 2 years in college, that's a bad idea. If you found somebody like that, let me know. I'd love to come and visit them. The reality is we have opportunities to close in a lot of different ways. So in the 5 months I've been here, we have been holding stakeholder meetings, which have included the heads of LSU, Southern University, BRCC, all these institutions that are post-secondary in our city. We've also worked with the mayor's office, our president mayor, Mayor Broom, around what does that look like. We've also started to talk to workforce development groups in the city, which we call our titans around who are these CEOs that hire the most in the city. Because you know we have some great corporations that are here that hire thousands and thousands of kids. And that has been a large part of our work, trying to get them to say, if we had children graduate at their senior year with industry certifications and associate's degree, what would that look different in our city? And you know what I usually hear? That's an awesome idea, Narcisse. The next question I usually hear is, can that really happen? So then I go back and tell them, I always try to take something that I heard Steve Jobs said. Everybody knows who Steve Jobs is, right? During his second time over Apple, he was sitting down talking to a reporter, and the reporter turns around and says to him, how did you make Apple so great? And so the reporter leans in, and he's waiting for this great response from Steve Jobs, right? And what does he say? I didn't think about what was impossible. I thought about what was possible. And then there was a pause. The reporter is still waiting for this great word he's about to say. He said, nope, that's it. He stopped thinking about what they couldn't do with their engineers and what they could actually do. And that's what you now have, all our young people, and maybe yourself with your Apple phones and your iPods and all these wonderful things that you love, created Apple into the different atmosphere that they are in today. Well, what if we made what we're talking about impossible possible? If we're able to get every child in that space, could our community be different? Absolutely. So I'm going to show you some more pieces of what we've already been working on. So I told you about this report that talked about the jobs that are currently here and that are not. There are 5 current jobs right now, if you look at in these particular fields, that we need jobs for right now. One is in technology, the other one's in construction and manufacturing. Third one is medical and pre-med. Just saw the CEO of Oshner, and he was like, I got jobs right now waiting. As a matter of fact, there was a report this morning on TV, I can't remember what channel it was, it was Channel 9 or one of them, but they were talking about a school saying that they didn't have enough nurses to be able to put kids in school, to give jobs to, but they got all these jobs, right? So that means if they don't give the jobs to our kids here, they're gonna have to recruit what? Externally, right? And so those are the things that they talked about this morning. Transportation and logistics, and what we call this our liberal arts management, which is we call our catch-all, because we may have some future business leaders that want to open up their own businesses and those things in the community. And also, they may not want to be in a specific track. So we call that our liberal arts management track. So in my conversations with the presidents of universities and all the state superintendent folks, we say, what would it look like if we could start designing what a track would look like for our children starting in our school? One, we have to start kids as early as possible to begin to be exposed to math that would apply to them in these industries. Two, we have to redesign some of our course sequencing. Long gone are these days of, you want to take this particular course or that particular course at graduate high school. Can you take some applied math that be applicable to something with construction manufacturing, if a child took that track. Those are kind of the ways of thinking that we found out that we can do. And the most beautiful thing I learned that I love our wonderful state of Louisiana is that in our state, we are one of the few states in the nation where you can redesign the junior and senior year of high school however you want. Whatever genius thought about that at the legislature, kudos to them. Because in most states, it's pretty clear about your courses that you have to take and when you have to take them in a sequence. What does that mean? That means you can move courses as early as possible from the upper level all the way down into middle school. So if you argue with me and say, well, Narcisse, kids can't absorb all that, I would then say to you, you are talking to a young man, well, I don't think I'm young anymore, my wife would say, but you're talking to an individual at the age of 5 that was speaking 3 languages. And I was a sponge. And my mom and dad learned English with me doing my homework. And the big thing is, when I was young, I can absorb anything you give me. So some of these things that we talk about, it's more about our belief system. It's not that the kids can't do that, but we have to expose them earlier to the model. Let me share with you a little bit more concrete spaces. So if a child was going into a major of technology, let's say they started from the middle school to go into that, they could currently go and make the salary range right now, coming out the 12th grade with either that industry certification or that associate's degree, a range of $45,000 to $98,000. They can go work for, these are just examples, IBM, they can work at the EBRP technology, they can work at Our Lady of Lakes, and probably for many of you, if we have folks in here that are earning that supervise for us. That's if you went into technology. There's a long more list I can show you. And notice that they would be able to go into these area of studies. We call it cybersecurity, network technology, et cetera, et cetera. If they went into construction and manufacturing, they could right now come out of 12th grade, right, with those certifications and make a range of a job between $53,000 to $87,000 right now. Without even having to go into 4 years of college, graduate school, and all those things. And they would go within those particular spaces of construction manufacturing. Medical and pre-med, that would be their salary range, and so forth and so on. This could be their reality. But by design, we don't think that way because someone has taught us differently, right? And what I'm trying to do is just to reverse that whole construct in our current school system. Same thing for transportation logistics. And then let's just say they want to go into liberal arts and management, right? They can do all these sets of jobs and start off with a salary range like that. Are those salaries not good? I think that's pretty good. Coming right out of 12th grade, you could definitely do that. And if they came out with their associate's degree at 12th grade, imagine if a parent said, well, I can't afford college, I can't pay for my first 2 years. Well, your first 2 years are done. Check that off the list. I want to go into graduate studies. Well, you do 2 more years at LSU or Southern, one of those schools, you're going right into grad school in 4 years to actually finish something that you want to do. Hopefully in the industry that you decided you started to do from the time you were in middle and high school, right? This is the kind of construct I believe that we can change our city into. And my push is that if we're able to, not if, when we redesign this work and we do it together, I think we're going to have a very different city of Baton Rouge. We'll have one that's much more intellectually connected to your workforce development. We'll have one where economy is to scale, right? And we'll also be a place where a lot of industry folks want to come because no district in the country has said they were going to do it at our size this way to scale. This is what I want the guy trying to get to do. That will be very different in our city. And our goal is to actually have our entire system move down this road within the next 3 years. We want to be able to start with a smaller cohort coming in this first year, transition that into the next year, 50% of the district, and then full capacity of this work 3 years from now. So when you're having a conversation with me and about work. We're talking about getting kids in actual jobs in the place that they're going to live in the future, right? And that is what our work is going to be moving forward. And so I'm going to give you one more slide. I'll pass the timeline because this is the work I just gave you in terms of how we think about a timeline. But I'm going to slide you to what I call my ask slide. I heard in every space I go to always have an ask slide. And so I have an ask slide. They told me that was the baptism to be a part of the community. So now I feel a part of the community. I have 4 asks for you. 1, I am not in spaces that you are all in all the time. Create space for this type of conversation. Understand what that means. See what it means to you. See, whether you have a child in our school system or not, I know as a city, if we get better, as the largest school district of the city, our city gets better. Create the conversation to engage in this conversation. The second thing I say is identify opportunities. We are working a lot to see who are the partners we can continue engagement. We've been working with the chamber on major partners for business and industry and those things. If you see that you are in a space that can contribute to help that, by all means, come aboard. We want to figure out how do we engage different folks from different parts of Baton Rouge to be a part of this process. Because as I told you before, it takes a village to do this work, not just a superintendent. The third thing is advocate and validate. See, everybody loves Steve Jobs and Apple and all that stuff. But there was a time in the history that they weren't always the most loved. You know that, right? Eventually, somebody got on board and said, that makes sense. We can do that. And then they became who they became. And now it's like a floodgates, right? I'm in a space where I believe we can create a floodgate for what it means for us to be high quality education, a workforce development city, and we're a group that does it as a partnership across the city as a village. The fourth thing I would ask is consider a donation, right? Donate to our foundation. We have an East Baton Rouge foundation. I know there were some folks that were here. You can raise your hand, right? We are working hard to build this model where we can create, when it's time for kids to do career jobs, internships, to do some of their actual experiences at the job site. Those things will take funding and money to do that. You see, people tell me all the time, is it about building buildings in a particular way? Because school systems have moved now to build that building in a certain way to help a kid learn. I would argue, in all the cities I've been, it's all about how you use your community assets to get the work done, right? See, we have partners in all these sets of industries. What if you had a child go to school and do some of the book stuff in the class, but then when they had to do their practicum or their experiences, they do it at a company, at a foundation, if they want to be head of a foundation, or at a welding place or those things. That's the reason why I met with all the CEOs and all that, because the reality is we have to use our assets in Baton Rouge in a different way. Untapped potential. We currently underutilize, from my perspective, our resources. And we have the time to do this different now. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. And my hope, or the strategy that I believe that we can do, is if we all can work together towards that and align ourselves, we will make our city a very different place for the students of this family. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Tina Holland, president of Franciscan University here in Baton Rouge. I really appreciate your enthusiasm and how well thought out the strategy is. And I'm wondering if you haven't gotten any pushback on the degree of narrowness of perhaps the approach, and what I'm speaking of is really an educational philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were talking about the economic gap, I couldn't help but think about the difference between W. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington and their approaches? Do I make a living at the cost of making a life? And to what degree are we depriving students in our attempt to close that economic gap? Are we opening up a cultural and intellectual gap?
Great question. I actually took a class at Vanderbilt around that. Talented, temp, and everything. I tell folks it's a very interesting philosophy. My argument is that we're doing both. And I'll tell you why. What we're trying to guarantee kids is that you can fall back on something. We're not saying to you, you can't open your mind, you can't do that. But the reality is, I don't know about you, but I went to college and I had 10 majors. How many people went to college, they started a major and they transitioned a whole lot? Raise your hand if you did. Look around with me, right? And what if I told you that the reasons I did all that wasn't because I didn't aspire to be at that job? Because I felt like, wow, I knew what my strength was, and I helped to navigate a little bit about, I can actually do this, right? I think the matter of the intellectual and the workforce component actually mirrors itself together, because the reality is everything you do in your livelihood ends at a job somewhere, right? The question is, how do you want to contribute back to a community in that space, right? We're not telling folks, if you get an associate's degree in high school degree in construction and manufacturing, you can't go and become a philosopher. We're just saying to you is, you clearly have an expertise in one space, and you can broaden that expertise in a lot of different spaces. But I do think we have to bring dreams a little closer, because my counter to that would be, most kids are trying to figure it all out as they're going through education, and then they begin to start to rely on whether it's their strengths or things that they're good at or not good at. And once they start making those type of decisions, that begins to influence the path even more, right? And I think that we wait too long to have kids start thinking about those strengths. In one district I was in, we started to assess kids' strengths as early as like 5th and 6th grade. People say, well, kids have different choices. Absolutely. But everyone has a strength eventually. They begin to have this aptitude of learning something, and they rely on that strength to navigate their belief systems over time, right? I'm a big believer that those things can be harnessed at a young age, whatever that thing is, and it's also influenced by your external community. See, I don't think kids come out just by design in a particular way. I think there's a lot of experiences that help them become who they become, right? And so when you think about your own children, your children believe in what you believe in most of the time, how you value things, what you do, because your family construct has put that view on belief for them over time. And if you are educated enough and have the resources, that design is a little more clear than somebody who doesn't have the same access, right? My view of the world is we can make things happen intentionally and not unintentionally. And I think we can minimize that by being focused in a particular way. Yes?
What are the 3 major challenges facing these Baton school systems?
So number one, I would argue, is kids need to be able to read, write, and comprehend at a higher level. Clear around that. So you probably hear me in the interview, I talk to them about literacy. And I'm not just talking about literacy reading a book. I'm talking about literacy in a lot of different ways. Like, how do they engage in understanding what are things in front of them? How do they engage around the experiences they have? It's a whole lot of construct around that. I think that's one. Number 2, I think kids struggle around opportunity. Trying to figure out what does it mean for them and how do they fit in the opportunities that are given to them in their current reality that they're in. And depending on where you live, where you're from, what access you have, that's predetermined in that space. And the third thing, I think our children are much more confident than we think about things, but I'm not always sure that they have the level of skills that they want to accomplish what they want to accomplish that they have. See, there's a lot of research that's happened that talks about this generation, right? This generation, what they believe in is very different from ours. If you're an employer, you know that this generation values social media in ways that you have never valued, right? Now, if you're under 19 in the room, you have a different philosophy. But I would argue, if you're up in your 30s, your 40s, maybe your late 20s, right? How you think about this world and how you've been exposed to this world is very different. See, if I wanted to go to any country, all I gotta do is YouTube it now. If I want people to know about what I think about marketing, I just gotta Instagram it, right? If I wanna do whatever, I'm thinking about it in a very marketing way that I was never exposed to as a child. See, when I grew up, I didn't have all that. Facebook was just coming out. Matter of fact, I was in college when Facebook came out. I don't know if many of you know, but Facebook was really set up because they were trying to hook up people on dates, right? And they spread over the college. Anybody knew that? Right? That was the original idea of Facebook, right? And it turned into the mammoth of it is today. He was like standing behind, I don't know if it's security or means I gotta go. But I'm just kidding. But the point I'm making to you is those are the three spaces, I think. And I think we have an opportunity to harness that in those particular areas.